In this video, I'm going to take a look at some of the weekly charts. So in the first one here, I've got the S&P. This was a week 13 in this intermediate cycle. This is the intermediate cycle bottom right here. Week 13, or next week, is going to be week 14. That's probably a little early for the intermediate cycle to top. Sentiment still isn't extreme. My thought was we're probably going to at least make it to the FOMC meeting on December 13th before we were to get an intermediate top. And anybody that has watched some of my previous videos knows my expectation was that we're likely to hit the bull market channel trend line before this intermediate cycle reaches a top. And depending on when that occurs, that's going to be somewhere around 2640 to maybe 2650 if we get into December before topping. And another consideration might be that this has been a very good year. I would imagine a lot of traders have profits on their stock market positions. I would think that people would be hesitant to sell those profitable positions until after the new year starts, so they can move their taxes from having to pay those in April of 2018. If they can hold those positions into the beginning of next year, then they can move that tax burden out to April of 2019. So I'm going to say we probably still got several weeks here before the intermediate cycle in stocks is likely to top. The next chart here is oil. Anybody that's been watching my videos knows that my prediction was that this intermediate cycle would not only be right translated and make a higher high above this one, which it has done, but I was expecting oil to at least make it up to this resistance zone right here in the $60 to $62 zone. This intermediate cycle is getting pretty mature. We're going to be on week 23 next week. This cycle from here to here lasted, I believe it was 27 or 28 weeks. So we're pushing right into that resistance zone here. We're at $59, nearing that $60 to $62 level. So I would say there's probably a good chance that oil may top in roughly the same timing band as the stock market, maybe in mid-December or the beginning of January. So we're just getting late in the cycle, probably a little too late to be really pushing the long side heavily in oil. And as I've noted previously, the energy stocks are not confirming this move in oil, so I would not be trading the energy stocks at all. If one wanted to trade oil and try and catch that last $1 to $3 move before the intermediate cycle tops, that's the only way I would trade the energy market. And personally, it's just too late in the intermediate cycle, and we're too close to that resistance zone. We may not have $3 potential left. We may have a dollar or less potential left before this intermediate cycle tops. So in my opinion, probably just too late to really push the long side in oil right now. Here we have the euro. We've got an extremely long intermediate cycle here. We've rallied enough to break this intermediate trend line. We did make at least one failed daily cycle here, so and the euro has now moved above this peak here, so we're making higher highs again. So I would say the odds are pretty good that the euro has completed an intermediate cycle low right here. We've got a very, very long intermediate cycle, and now that we've broken this trend line and made a higher high, I have to think that the counter trend move, the correction, is probably over, and the euro is starting a new intermediate advance. And if that's correct, if the euro is controlling the currency cycles, then that probably means that the dollar, the counter trend dead cat bounce in the dollar is probably over, and it's starting an intermediate decline. And you can see here we have broken the intermediate trend line, and this looks to me like the dollar has rolled over and started the declining phase of its intermediate cycle. The one conundrum I have is that this little pullback here on a daily chart, it actually didn't drop far enough to break the daily cycle trend line, so that it makes me question whether or not that was a daily cycle low. Without breaking that trend line, I would have to say no. And if that's the case, then what we're looking at here is one really long daily cycle in the dollar that's on day, I think it's going to be on day 56 come Monday. And a cycle that's on day 56 is way overdue for some kind of a bounce out of a daily cycle low. So the question now becomes whether or not the euro is going to control the currency cycles, and if so, the euro is still early in a daily cycle, and that's going to force the dollar into a 70 or 80 day cycle that may not bounce until we come down and test this low, or whether or not the dollar is going to control the currency cycles, and considering it's on day 56, it's going to bounce sometime soon, forcing the euro into at least a half cycle low, or maybe another short daily cycle low. But the bigger picture, the larger intermediate cycles, it sure looks to me like the euro has bottomed and the dollar has topped. Japanese yen, same thing as the euro. We've got a pattern of lower lows and lower highs here. That should complete the intermediate cycle decline. We've now, I won't draw it in, but we've now broken the intermediate trend line. We've got weekly swings. So it looks to me like the yen has also completed an very long, very extended intermediate cycle, but it looks to me like the intermediate degree bottom has formed, and the yen is now in the advancing phase of a new intermediate cycle. And finally, gold, and here's the conundrum I have in the gold market. I hypothesized a possible short cycle here back in early September. We got out of our long positions based on that hypothesis. The reason I said that was because this cycle here ran really long, and then I think this was the intermediate cycle low right here, but this intermediate cycle ran really long, and so my theory was that we had like 3 really long intermediate cycles in a row. We probably needed a short cycle at some point to balance those out, and as of right now, that is still possible. This would be a week 12 intermediate cycle low. The problem is that we just haven't gotten any upside follow through. We've just been in kind of a sideways mess for the last month and a half. And so at this time, I can't tell whether or not this was a week 12 intermediate cycle low, and now since the euro and the yen have bottomed and the dollar looks to have topped, is gold finally going to get some upside traction and start moving to the upside and confirm this as a week 12 low, or will the dollar take control of the currency cycles here soon, give us a bounce out of that really stretched daily cycle, and then that triggers a move down that breaks below this October low, gives us our bloodbath phase and maybe a bottom around the mid-December during the FOMC meeting, and we get a normal duration intermediate cycle, which normal duration would be somewhere between 19 and 23, 24 weeks. And next week is going to be week 20 on gold. So if we were to make it to mid-December, then that would put us right in the middle of a normal timing band, right around week 23 or 4. So that remains to be seen. The currency markets are suggesting this is going to be the intermediate cycle low. But gold is just really not getting any upside traction, even though the euro and the yen are, and it's been locked in this sideways mess for the last month and a half. So anybody's guess on the gold market.